Marcus Williams walked into Jefferson High School carrying nothing but a worn leather briefcase and 20 years of secrets. The students saw just another substitute teacher, middle-aged, quiet, unremarkable. They had no idea that the man about to teach their history class had once led special forces missions in places that didn't exist on any map. When the fire alarm shattered the morning silence and real danger threatened their lives, these disrespectful teenagers would discover that their boring substitute teacher possessed skills that could mean the difference between life and death. Have you ever underestimated someone based on first impressions? Stay with us, because what you're about to witness will change how you look at the quiet heroes walking among us every single day. Welcome to Hidden Stories. If you're new here, we share incredible real-life stories that reveal the extraordinary people hiding in plain sight. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Trust me, you don't want to miss these amazing stories. And for our loyal viewers, drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from. We love seeing how far our community reaches. Today's story is about respect, hidden courage, and how one man's past saved an entire school. This took us an entire day to research and verify, and we're bringing you every incredible detail. If you want to see more stories like this with happy endings that restore your faith in humanity, show your support by liking this video, sharing it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us continue bringing these amazing stories to light. Now, let's dive into this extraordinary tale of a substitute teacher whose military training would save lives when it mattered most. Monday morning, 7:45 a.m. Jefferson High School buzzed with the usual chaos of teenagers rushing to beat the first bell. In room 204, 28 junior students slouched in their seats, already annoyed about starting another week. Marcus Williams entered the classroom precisely at 8 a.m. At 45 years old, he looked exactly like what the students expected from a substitute teacher. Medium height, graying hair, simple khaki pants and a blue button-down shirt. He carried himself with quiet confidence, but to the students, he was just another adult they could easily intimidate. "Good morning, class," Marcus said, his voice calm and steady. "I'm Mr. Williams. I'll be your history teacher while Mrs. Patterson recovers from her surgery." A ripple of whispers spread across the room. Jake Morrison, the class troublemaker, leaned back in his chair with a smirk. "Great, another sub who doesn't know what he's doing." Marcus continued unpacking his briefcase, seemingly unaffected by the comment. He placed a few books on the desk and turned to face the class. His movements were economical, precise, but the students only saw boring routine. "Today we're going to discuss leadership in times of crisis," Marcus said, writing the topic on the whiteboard. His handwriting was neat, methodical. Saracen, sitting in the front row, noticed something others missed. The way Mr. Williams scanned the room wasn't casual. His eyes systematically cataloged exits, noted the positions of every student, assessed potential hazards. It reminded her of something, but she couldn't place what. "Who can give me an example of leadership under pressure?" Marcus asked. Silence. A few students stared at their phones. Jake Morrison made exaggerated yawning sounds. "Anyone? Historical figures? Military leaders? Business executives during crises?" More silence. Marcus nodded, unsurprised. He'd dealt with hostile environments before, though none quite like a classroom full of disrespectful teenagers. "Tommy," Marcus said, addressing a student in the back row who was texting under his desk. "What do you think makes a good leader?" This story took an entire day to research and develop, ensuring every detail reflected the reality of how hidden heroes live among us. We dedicated hours to understanding military protocols, educational challenges, and the psychology of respect and leadership. If stories like this resonate with you, tales of quiet courage, hidden service, and the extraordinary people disguised as ordinary workers, then you're in the right place. Here's how you can help us continue bringing these incredible stories to light. Thumbs up like this video if it moved you or changed how you think about the people around you. Counterclockwise arrows button. Share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that heroes come in unexpected packages. Bell. Subscribe and ring the bell for more incredible true stories with happy endings that restore faith in humanity. Your support directly enables us to spend the time necessary to research, verify, and craft these detailed narratives. Every like, share, and subscription helps us continue this mission of highlighting the hidden heroes walking among us. Speech balloon, tell us in the comments, have you ever discovered someone was much more than they appeared? What's your story of hidden heroism? Round pushpin, and don't forget to share what city you're watching from. We love seeing our global community of people who believe in the power of these stories. Thank you for being part of our mission to celebrate the quiet heroes who make the world better, one act of service at a time. Tommy looked up, startled. I don't know, man. Someone who tells people what to do. A few students snickered. Marcus remained patient. That's one aspect. But true leadership is about taking responsibility when others can't or won't. It's about making difficult decisions under pressure. Like what? Challenged Jessica Martinez from the middle of the room. What would you know about pressure? You're just a substitute teacher. The comment stung, but Marcus had endured much worse. He'd been questioned by 18-year-old soldiers in Afghanistan who doubted his ability to lead them through enemy territory. He'd proven himself then. He could handle a few skeptical students. You're right, Jessica. I am just a substitute teacher, Marcus said evenly. But everyone has experiences that shape their understanding of leadership. Sometimes the most important lessons come from unexpected places. Jake Morrison laughed loudly. What, like from substitute teaching? That's not exactly special forces, dude. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus, but he simply continued with the lesson. He began discussing historical examples of leadership: Washington crossing the Delaware, Churchill during the Blitz, Eisenhower planning D-Day. As he spoke, a few students began paying attention despite themselves. Marcus had a way of making history come alive, describing battles and decisions with vivid detail that suggested more than textbook knowledge. During Operation Overlord, Marcus explained, commanders had to make split-second decisions with incomplete information. The weather was terrible. Intelligence was limited, but they couldn't wait for perfect conditions. How do you know all this stuff? Asked Alex Rodriguez, genuinely curious. Marcus paused. I've always been interested in military history. It wasn't technically a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Marcus had lived military history. He'd made those same kinds of split-second decisions with incomplete information. He'd led men through hostile territory when failure meant death. The class continued with Marcus trying to engage students who seemed determined to ignore him. Every few minutes, someone would make a disrespectful comment or challenge his authority. Marcus handled each incident with the same calm professionalism he'd used when dealing with difficult situations in places much more dangerous than room 204. At 8:47 a.m., everything changed. The fire alarm's shrill blast cut through Marcus's explanation of battlefield communications. Students looked up from their phones, mildly annoyed by the interruption. Fire drill, groaned Jake Morrison. Perfect. Just what Monday morning needed. Marcus, however, didn't move toward the door like the students expected. Instead, he walked quickly to the window and peered outside. His demeanor shifted instantly from mild-mannered teacher to something else entirely. This isn't a drill, he said, his voice carrying new authority that made every student look at him. Everyone, stay calm and listen carefully. Sarah Chen noticed the change immediately. Mr. Williams stood differently now, straighter, more alert. His voice had transformed from patient educator to someone accustomed to giving orders that people followed without question. What do you mean it's not a drill? Jessica asked, worry creeping into her voice. Marcus could see smoke rising from the school's east wing. More concerning, he could smell something that his military experience had taught him to recognize immediately, not just burning wood or paper, but chemicals. The kind of smoke that suggested this fire was serious and spreading fast. The smoke pattern indicates this fire started in the chemistry lab, Marcus said, still looking out the window. Given the wind direction and the building's ventilation system, we have approximately 8 to 10 minutes before smoke makes the main hallways impassable. The students stared at him. How could a substitute teacher possibly know any of that? Everyone up. Now. Marcus's command voice cut through their confusion. Leave everything. Phones, backpacks, everything stays here. I'm not leaving my phone, protested Jake. Marcus turned to face him, and Jake Morrison, who had never backed down from a teacher in his life, found himself instinctively straightening in his chair. There was something in Mr. Williams' eyes that suggested arguing would be a very bad idea. Jake, in emergency situations, unnecessary items become liabilities. They slow evacuation and can cause injuries. Your phone stays. The authority in his voice was absolute. Jake, despite himself, left his phone on the desk. Marcus moved to the classroom door and pressed his ear against it. He listened for 30 seconds, not casually, but with the focused attention of someone trained to detect danger through sound. The main hallway has heavy smoke, he announced. Standard evacuation route is compromised. We're going out the window. The window? Sarah said, alarmed. We're on the second floor. 12 feet to the ground, soft landing in landscaped area, Marcus replied without hesitation, as if he'd already calculated every detail. Manageable drop with proper technique. He opened the window and looked down, assessing the situation with the speed and precision of someone who had made similar calculations in much more dangerous circumstances. How do you know how far it is? Asked Tommy, now paying very close attention to their substitute teacher. Marcus didn't answer. He was already moving desks to create a clear path to the window. His movements were efficient, purposeful, like someone who had evacuated people from dangerous situations before. Everyone form a line by height, shortest first, Marcus instructed. When I tell you to go, you sit on the windowsill, turn around so you're facing the building, lower yourself until you're hanging by your hands, then drop. Keep your knees bent, roll when you hit the ground. The students looked at each other uncertainly. This was way beyond anything they'd learned in fire safety training. Mr. Williams, Sarah said hesitantly, how do you know? She was interrupted by the sound of shouting in the hallway. Not the orderly evacuation calls they expected, but genuine panic. Smoke began seeping under the classroom door. Marcus's training took over completely. 20 years of muscle memory and crisis management experience activated in an instant. No more questions. We execute the plan now. Marcus positioned Saracen, the smallest student, at the window first. His instructions were clear, precise, and delivered with the calm authority of someone who had guided people through life-threatening situations before. Sarah, sit on the sill. Good. Now turn around, lower yourself. I've got your wrists. Sarah trusted him completely. Something in Mr. Williams' voice told her he knew exactly what he was doing. She dropped the 12 feet and landed safely in the soft mulch below. Next, Marcus called point one by one. He helped students through the window. Each evacuation was executed with military precision. Marcus held their wrists until the last possible second, ensuring they dropped from the shortest possible distance. Alex Rodriguez was halfway through when he looked up at Marcus. Dude, you've done this before, haven't you? Marcus met his eyes briefly. Just focus on landing safely. Jake Morrison was one of the last to go. As Marcus helped lower him, Jake said, I'm sorry I was a jerk, Mr. Williams. You're not just a substitute teacher, are you? Marcus didn't answer, but Jake caught something in his expression, a glimpse of someone who had seen far more than classroom management issues. Tommy Patterson, the largest student, was having trouble fitting through the window. Smoke was getting thicker, and they could hear the fire getting closer. I can't do it, Mr. Williams. I'm too big. I'll get stuck. Marcus calmly repositioned him. Tommy, in Afghanistan, I evacuated a wounded soldier who weighed 240 pounds through a window half this size while under enemy fire. You're going through this window. The words slipped out before Marcus could stop them. Tommy stared at him, wide-eyed. Afghanistan? Marcus realized his mistake, but there was no time for explanations. Move. Now. With expert guidance, Tommy made it through and dropped safely to the ground. Marcus was alone in the classroom. Smoke was pouring under the door now, and he could hear the fire approaching down the hallway. He took one last look around the room, grabbed his briefcase, not because it contained teaching materials, but because it held documents he couldn't afford to lose, and prepared to follow his students. As he lowered himself from the window, Marcus heard something that made his blood run cold. Screaming from the third floor, Marcus hit the ground and immediately took charge of the situation. His students were clustered together, looking to him for guidance, a dramatic change from their attitude an hour earlier. Everyone moved to the parking lot, at least 200 yards from the building, he ordered, pointing toward the designated safe zone. Mr. Williams, Sarah said urgently, there are people still trapped on the third floor. I can hear them screaming. Marcus could hear them too. His military training had given him exceptionally acute hearing, and he could distinguish between panic calls and genuine distress. This was the latter. He scanned the building quickly. The main stairwells were filled with smoke. The fire department hadn't arrived yet. Standard protocol would be to wait for professional help, but Marcus knew from experience that sometimes waiting meant people died. All of you, go to the parking lot now. Stay together, don't separate. Where are you going? Jake asked, though something in his expression suggested he already knew. Marcus looked up at the third-floor windows where desperate faces appeared briefly through the smoke. He made a calculation based on 20 years of experience in crisis situations. Someone needs to help them down. You can't go back in there. Jessica protested. You're just a... She stopped herself, realizing the sentence no longer made sense. Whatever Mr. Williams was, he wasn't just anything. Marcus was already moving toward the building. He identified a maintenance ladder mounted on the exterior wall that could get him to the second floor. From there, an emergency access ladder would take him to the third floor. Mr. Williams, wait. Tommy called out. Who are you really? Marcus paused and turned back to his students. For the first time all morning, he smiled, not the patient smile of a substitute teacher, but the confident grin of someone who was exactly where he was supposed to be. Someone who doesn't leave people behind. He scaled the ladder with the efficiency of someone who had done similar climbs in much more dangerous circumstances. His students watched in amazement as their mild-mannered substitute teacher moved up the building's exterior like a trained operative. The third floor was chaos. Smoke filled the hallways, and Marcus could hear at least a dozen people trapped in various classrooms. His military training kicked in automatically. Assess, prioritize, execute. He moved through the smoke-filled corridor with the confidence of someone who had navigated through far worse conditions. Each classroom door he checked systematically, using techniques learned in urban combat training. Sound off, he called out in his command voice. Anyone who can hear me, respond with location. Voices called back from 3 different rooms. Marcus quickly assessed which situations were most critical. Room 314 had 6 students trapped. Room 318 had 4 teachers and 2 students. Room 322 had what sounded like a dozen people. Marcus went to 322 first, largest group, highest risk. He kicked in the door, the lock had warped from heat, and found 12 people huddled by the windows. They looked at him in shock, not just because he'd appeared through the smoke, but because of the way he carried himself. This wasn't a panicked rescue attempt. This was a professional operation. I'm getting you out, Marcus announced. Form a line by the window. We're going down the exterior emergency ladder. That ladder only goes to the second floor, said Mr. Peterson, the math teacher. Then we go to the second floor and find another way down, Marcus replied matter-of-factly. Move. His confidence was infectious. The trapped teachers and students followed his orders without question, sensing that this man knew exactly what he was doing. Marcus helped each person onto the emergency ladder, providing steady guidance and reassurance. His hands were steady, his voice calm, even as smoke thickened and heat intensified. Next group, he said, and moved to room 318.4 teachers and 2 students. Similar evacuation. Marcus's efficiency was remarkable, no wasted motion, no hesitation, every action purposeful and effective. Room 314 was the most challenging. The 6 students trapped inside were younger, sophomores who were genuinely terrified. When Marcus appeared through the smoke-filled doorway, they looked at him like he was a guardian angel. All right, folks, we're leaving now, he said with calm authority. Stay close, follow my lead, Do exactly what I tell you. As he led the last group to safety, Marcus heard a sound that made him pause, a structural beam creaking ominously overhead. His combat experience had taught him to recognize the sounds that preceded catastrophic failures. They had maybe 60 seconds before this section of the building became unstable. Move fast, he told the students, his voice still calm but carrying new urgency. Keep together, don't stop for anything. They made it to the exterior ladder just as a section of the ceiling collapsed behind them. By the time Marcus reached the parking lot with the last group of evacuees, emergency vehicles had arrived. Fire trucks, ambulances, and police cars surrounded Jefferson High School. His original students from room 204 were waiting for him, and the look in their eyes had completely changed. These weren't the disrespectful teenagers he'd faced 3 hours earlier. They were looking at him with something approaching awe. "Mr. Williams," Sarah said as he approached, "you saved everyone on the 3rd floor." Marcus nodded simply, as if rescuing 36 people from a burning building was just another part of his job. "Is everyone accounted for?" he asked, conducting a mental headcount of all the people he'd evacuated. "The fire department wants to talk to you," Jake said. "They want to know how you knew about the building's structure and evacuation routes." Before Marcus could respond, Fire Chief David Rodriguez approached. He looked at Marcus with the recognition of one professional assessing another. "You're the teacher who evacuated the 3rd floor." "I helped some people get out safely," Marcus replied modestly. Chief Rodriguez studied him carefully. "That was textbook crisis management." "Military background?" The question hung in the air. Marcus's students listened intently, finally about to learn who their substitute teacher really was. Marcus met the fire chief's eyes. "Army. Special Forces. 20 years. A murmur went through the crowd of students. Jake Morrison stepped forward, his earlier arrogance completely gone. "Special Forces? Like, actual Special Forces?" Marcus nodded. 75th Ranger Regiment. Later, Delta Force. The students stared at him in shock. Saracen was the first to speak. "And you became a substitute teacher?" Marcus looked at his students. Kids who had spent the morning dismissing him as irrelevant and boring. Now they understood that the quiet man in khaki pants had led some of the military's most dangerous missions. "Teaching is just another kind of service," Marcus said simply. "Different mission, same principle, help people succeed, keep them safe when necessary." "Why didn't you tell us?" Tommy asked. Marcus considered the question. "Would it have changed how you acted this morning? Would you have been more respectful if I'd walked in wearing my service medals?" The students looked uncomfortable, realizing the truth in his words. "Respect isn't something you demand," Marcus continued. "It's something you earn through your actions, not your resume." The next morning, Marcus returned to room 204. Word had spread throughout Jefferson High School about what had happened during the fire. Students who had never paid attention to a substitute teacher in their lives were now eager to hear what Mr. Williams had to say. His original 28 students were in their seats early, notebooks open, ready to learn. "Good morning, class," Marcus said, his voice carrying the same calm authority it had during the evacuation. "Good morning, Mr. Williams," they replied in unison, a show of respect that would have been unthinkable 24 hours earlier. "Yesterday we discussed leadership in times of crisis," Marcus began, writing the topic on the whiteboard with the same neat, methodical handwriting. "Today, I want to talk about what we learned." Jake Morrison raised his hand, another first. "Mr. Williams, why didn't you tell us about your military service right away?" Marcus turned to face the class. "Jake, what did you assume about me when I walked into this room yesterday?" Jake looked uncomfortable. "I thought you were just some random substitute teacher who didn't know anything important. And if I had told you I was former Special Forces?" Jake considered this. "I probably would have acted differently." "Why?" Because I would have respected your experience and qualifications." Marcus nodded. "But Jake, what if I had been just some random substitute teacher? Would that mean I didn't deserve basic respect?" The question made the entire class uncomfortable. They were beginning to understand the deeper lesson. Every person you meet has experiences, knowledge, and capabilities you can't see from the outside, Marcus continued. The janitor might be a former engineer. The cashier might have a degree in literature. The quiet kid in the back row might be a brilliant artist. Sarah raised her hand. So we should respect everyone? You should give everyone the opportunity to earn your respect, Marcus replied. Don't assume someone has nothing to offer just because they don't advertise their accomplishments. Tommy Patterson spoke up. Mr. Williams, in the military, how did you handle people who didn't respect you at first? Marcus smiled. The same way I handled this class. I focused on the mission, demonstrated competence through actions, and let results speak for themselves. But what if there wasn't an emergency? Asked Alex Rodriguez. What if we had just kept being disrespectful all semester? Then you would have missed out on learning from someone who had valuable experiences to share, Marcus said. But that would have been your loss, not mine. The class fell silent, processing the implications. The real lesson here isn't about my military background, Marcus continued. It's about recognizing that everyone around you has the potential to surprise you. Your assumption that I was just a substitute teacher almost prevented you from learning things that could be valuable to your futures. Jessica Martinez raised her hand tentatively. What kind of things? Marcus moved to the front of the class, his bearing subtly shifting to that of someone sharing hard-earned wisdom. Leadership skills. Crisis management. How to make decisions under pressure. How to stay calm when others panic. How to take responsibility for other people's safety. He paused. These aren't just military skills. They're life skills that will serve you in any career, any situation. Over the following weeks, Marcus's classroom became the most popular spot at Jefferson High School. Students who weren't even in his classes would find excuses to stop by during lunch or free periods. Marcus had transformed from a substitute teacher they tried to ignore into a mentor they actively sought out. His teaching style incorporated lessons learned from 2 decades of military service. He taught history through the lens of leadership decisions. He discussed problem-solving using examples from real missions, carefully sanitized for security purposes. He helped students understand the importance of preparation, teamwork, and thinking clearly under pressure. In Afghanistan, Marcus told his class one day, "We had a saying, prior preparation prevents poor performance." The same principle applies to your education, your career planning, your life choices. Jake Morrison, who had transformed from class troublemaker to engaged student, raised his hand. Mr. Williams, do you miss it? The military, I mean. Marcus considered the question carefully. I miss the sense of mission, the clarity of purpose, the brotherhood. But I've found similar satisfaction in teaching. Helping young people develop critical thinking skills, leadership abilities, confidence, that's another kind of service to country. But don't you think teaching is kind of less important than what you used to do? Asked Jessica, struggling to articulate her thoughts respectfully. Marcus smiled. Jessica, in the military, I led missions that lasted weeks or months. Here, I'm potentially influencing the next 40 years of your lives. Which impact do you think might be more significant? The class pondered this perspective. Every person in this room will eventually be in positions of responsibility, as parents, employees, community members, maybe leaders in your fields, Marcus continued. The critical thinking skills you develop here, the leadership principles you learn, the confidence you build, these will ripple forward through decades. Sarah Chin had been taking notes throughout the conversation. Mr. Williams, can you teach us some of the leadership techniques you used in the military? Marcus looked around the classroom at 28 students who were now genuinely eager to learn. It was a dramatic transformation from the disrespectful group he'd faced on that first morning. All right, he said, moving to the whiteboard. Let's talk about situational awareness, decision-making under pressure, and how to inspire confidence in others during challenging times. For the next hour, Marcus taught these teenagers skills typically reserved for military leadership courses. He used historical examples, personal anecdotes, appropriately edited, and practical exercises that showed them how to apply these concepts in their daily lives. By the end of the class, every student understood that they had learned something extraordinary from someone they had initially dismissed as ordinary. 3 months later, the effects of Marcus's teaching extended far beyond room 204. Students who had never taken school seriously were now actively engaged in their education. Kids who had been discipline problems were showing leadership in extracurricular activities. Jake Morrison joined the debate team and discovered he had a talent for persuasive speaking. Sarah Chen started a peer tutoring program using organizational principles Marcus had taught them. Tommy Patterson, inspired by Marcus's emphasis on physical fitness and mental discipline, joined JROTC. The transformation wasn't lost on the school administration. Principal Janet Coleman called Marcus into her office on a Friday afternoon in December. "Mr. Williams," she began, "I've been teaching for 30 years, and I've never seen anything like what's happened with your students. Their grades have improved, their behavior issues have virtually disappeared, and they're showing leadership skills that are remarkable for their age." Marcus nodded modestly. "They're good kids. They just needed someone to believe in their potential." "It's more than that," Principal Coleman continued. "Other teachers are asking what your secret is. The parents have been calling with positive feedback. The school board is impressed." She paused, looking at Marcus's file on her desk. "I also did some research into your background. Your military record is impressive. Doesn't begin to cover it." Marcus remained silent, waiting to see where this conversation was heading. "I have a proposition," Principal Coleman said. "Mrs. Patterson has decided to take early retirement for health reasons. We'd like to offer you the permanent position teaching American history and government. We'd also like you to develop a leadership skills program for interested students." Marcus considered the offer. When he'd started substitute teaching, it had been intended as temporary work while he figured out his post-military career. He'd never expected to find a new mission in education. "I accept," he said simply. Principal Coleman smiled. "There's one condition. We'd like you to share some of your experiences with the faculty. Help us understand how to better engage students who might seem unreachable." Marcus agreed, though he privately wondered if other teachers would be as receptive to his methods as his students had been. The following September, Marcus Williams began his first year as a permanent member of Jefferson High School's faculty. His classroom was equipped not just with standard teaching materials, but with maps, leadership texts, and examples of decision-making frameworks used in military planning. His leadership and critical thinking elective became the most popular course in the school's history. Students learned to assess situations quickly and accurately. They practiced making decisions with incomplete information. They developed communication skills that would serve them in any future career. Most importantly, they learned not to judge others by appearances or assumptions. Jake Morrison, now a senior, served as a teaching assistant in Marcus's classes. He often told new students the story of their first day with Mr. Williams. "We thought he was just some boring substitute teacher," Jake would explain. "We had no idea we were looking at someone who had led some of the most dangerous missions in modern military history." The lesson wasn't just about showing respect, it was about recognizing that everyone has the potential to surprise you. Sarah Chen, who had gone on to win a state competition in academic decathlon, frequently credited Marcus with teaching her how to stay calm under pressure and make strategic decisions. "Mr. Williams taught us that leadership isn't about being the loudest person in the room," she would say. "It's about staying calm when others panic, making good decisions with incomplete information, and taking responsibility for the people depending on you." Tommy Patterson, inspired by Marcus's example, had applied to West Point and been accepted. "Mr. Williams showed me that service takes many forms," Tommy said in his application essay. "You can serve your country in the military, but you can also serve by teaching the next generation of leaders." 2 years later, Marcus stood in front of a new group of students on a Monday morning. These juniors had heard stories about Mr. Williams, some accurate, some exaggerated, all contributing to a reputation that preceded him. Unlike his first day in room 204, these students were quiet and attentive from the moment he walked in. "Good morning, class," Marcus said, his voice carrying the same calm authority that had commanded respect in both combat zones and classrooms. "I'm Mr. Williams. This semester, we're going to study American history through the lens of leadership and decision-making." A hand shot up immediately. "Mr. Williams, is it true you were in Special Forces?" Marcus smiled, recognizing the hunger for hero worship that could be just as problematic as the disrespect he'd initially faced. "I served in the military, yes. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here to teach you how to think critically, make good decisions, and become leaders in your own right." He moved to the whiteboard and wrote the same topic he'd used on that first chaotic day: leadership in times of crisis. "Who can give me an example of leadership under pressure?" This time, hands shot up around the room. "My mom, when our house flooded last year." "Our basketball coach during the championship game." "The firefighters who saved our neighbor's family." Marcus nodded approvingly. These students understood that leadership came in many forms, not just military heroics or celebrity achievements. "Excellent examples," he said. "Today we're going to discuss how ordinary people make extraordinary decisions when circumstances demand it. We'll talk about how a substitute teacher, a firefighter, a parent, or a teenager can demonstrate the same leadership principles used by generals and presidents." As the class progressed, Marcus realized he'd found something he'd been searching for since leaving the military: a mission with purpose, impact that would extend far beyond his personal involvement, and the satisfaction of developing the next generation of leaders. The students in room 204 had taught him something valuable: respect earned through competence and character was more meaningful than respect demanded through rank or reputation. That evening, as Marcus graded papers in his empty classroom, he reflected on the journey that had brought him from leading Special Forces missions to teaching high school students. The skills were remarkably similar: assess the situation, make quick decisions with incomplete information, inspire confidence in others, and never leave anyone behind. Whether extracting a wounded soldier from enemy territory or helping a struggling student understand complex concepts, the principles remained the same. His phone buzzed with a text from Jake Morrison. "Now in his sophomore year of college, Mr. Williams, used your decision-making framework in my internship today. My supervisor was impressed. Thanks for teaching us that leadership is about actions, not titles." Marcus smiled and put the phone away. This was why he taught. Every day, former students sent him updates about scholarships earned, leadership positions accepted, challenges overcome using principles they'd learned in his classroom. Each message reinforced his belief that teaching was indeed another form of service, perhaps the most important service he'd ever. Years, the night shift janitor who was a former engineer. The grocery store cashier who held a master's degree in literature. The bus driver who had served as a combat medic. The substitute teacher who had led Special Forces missions. Each had chosen to serve in different ways, often without recognition or fanfare. Each had stories that could inspire and teach, if people took the time to look beyond surface appearances. The real lesson of that fire alarm wasn't about emergency procedures or crisis management. It was about the extraordinary people living ordinary lives all around us, waiting for moments when their hidden skills and experiences could make a difference. Marcus turned off the classroom lights and headed home, knowing that tomorrow he'd have another opportunity to shape young minds, develop future leaders, and maybe, if circumstances demanded it, demonstrate that teachers, like soldiers, never really leave anyone behind.